Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with Unyoked. I'm Ellie. I'm one of the campaign managers here at Birchal. And just before I introduce Chris and Cam, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, I'm joined by Chris and Cam from Unyoked. Birchal is working with Unyoked on an upcoming crowdsourced funding offer. So, what is crowdsource funding, or you may have heard of it as CSF? Crowdsource funding, or you also may have heard of it as equity crowdfunding, is a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors and wholesale or sophisticated investors through an online platform, which is Birchal. Instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as banks or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public and often their communities to raise money in exchange for equity in their business. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for the offer. The information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. Please always do your own research and consider the offer document and general CSF risk warning before investing. And if you want to find out any more information on that, you can head over to our website at birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run, Chris and Cam are going to take us through a great presentation, which will approximately be about 15 to 20, 30 minutes, all about Unyoked, where they've come from, what they're looking to do with their capital raise. We'll then switch to a Q&A session. So if you look to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A bubble. And if you have any questions during today's session, please just pop them in the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll answer them at the Q&A time at the end. We are recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, that's totally fine. We will send around the recording. So without further ado, I will hand over to Chris and Cam.
Thank you for that, Ellie. And thank you everyone who's tuning in. We appreciate your time. And my name is Chris Grant. This is my twin brother and co-founder, Cam Grant.
Hey guys.
We're the co-CEOs and co-founders of Unyoked, and we're super excited to take you guys through a little bit of what we've been up to and the exciting opportunity ahead today.
Yeah, so we'll be taking you through, like Ellie said, where we've come from, where we are, and then a bit about where we'd like to go as well. And as Ellie said, we usually do this as a bit of back and forth, but today's a bit more of a presentation with the Q&A at the end. So any questions, write them down as we're going, and then we'll jump into them after this. So kicking us off, in a nutshell, what Unyoked does is facilitates the ability for people to get in touch with nature easily and impactfully. So accessing it regularly for its benefits becomes as natural as going to the gym or using a meditation app. That was why we started the business. That was our goal from day one. So Chris and I, as you guys hopefully already know, are twin brothers. We grew up moving around Australia for most of our childhood and our sort of early teenage years. And one of the constants during that time was the outdoors. Like we would move to a new city, we'd be thrown outdoors, and we didn't have any friends at the time, so the nature became that for us. And then as we grew up, that became camping and hiking and trekking. And then throughout university, sort of when we did our first travels overseas, it became off-grid locations like Sumatra, Nepal, and South America and things like that. Fast forward to when we were in managerial roles, working our corporate lives. I was a manager in the strategy department of Commonwealth Bank, and Chris was scaling another startup called General Assembly here and over in Singapore. We noticed ourselves getting stressed, anxious, burnt out, and it went on for some time, but we realized that what was missing in our lives was that contact with nature. So we were stuck in that rat race, that busy cycle of life. We were not able to get to nature easily. So we still went camping, but that took time and effort. And there was nothing quite there that would put us into the middle of nature easily. So we could do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday when we needed to. So when we were peak stress. And that's what we set out to build. So we did that by basically realizing that there were a large number of properties that were easy to access, so within an hour or two of a major city, on private land, And with the sharing economy sort of taking off, we realized that landowners would maybe be open to sharing their properties with people who had like-minded goals of getting out to nature, in exchange for making some revenue. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of our business model, and that's how we started. So we put uniquely designed sort of minimalist cabins that are totally off the grid in secluded and immersive natural locations, no more than 2 hours drive from the city, on private land. For that, the consumer gets access to convenient and impactful natural locations, so being away from everybody else, so you can feel those real benefits of nature, and in a way that they can get to during the week. And the landowner is able to unlock a previously underutilized piece of land. So a little field down here by the river, a little glade over here, and they're able to generate some pretty decent revenue for not much effort, because of the way that we've built our systems and processes. But we can touch on that in a little bit.
That's right. So we aim to empower our customers to really get the maximum benefits that nature has to offer, and we do that through a detailed and intentional experience, and that's really what sets Unyoked apart. So from the moment you book with us, you're guided through how to put the right intent behind your stay, what to think about on your drive down, which playlist to listen to when you get there. You've got to park away from the cabin and work for it a little bit to earn that start of the experience, and also leave that visual reminder of your regular life behind, so you're not looking at the car every time you look out the window. To things like having a hand grind your own coffee, so that you've got some time to stop and to appreciate the surroundings around you. To celebrity guided meditations. We've got it all there to ensure that everything is focused on you getting the most out of the experience. And we offer in both we operate in both B2B and B2C markets. So we have a actually, you guys might be interested in this, a bit of a tangent, but we ran a 15,000 person consumer research study a year and a half ago or so, and it asked working age population people living in urban areas, had they felt burnt out, had they been burnt out in the last 12 months? And the results were quite resounding. It was 98% of respondents, of those 15,000 respondents, said that they'd been burnt out in the last 12 months. Now, that's a massive issue for a whole lot of reasons, one of which being it's costing billions and billions of dollars to our businesses every year in absenteeism and lack of productivity. So we actually have an Unyoked for Work program where we partner with leading companies like Canva, News Corp, Hub Australia, who purchase recurring nights for their teams to be able to access the cabins, one, to fight that burnout and to address that problem and to recharge and come back better for it. But two, sometimes to tackle a particular problem and harness the creative power of nature, get away into a different environment to tackle that problem and come back better for it that way too. Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole idea, as you guys have heard, is to help people tap into those benefits of nature easily and impactfully. That's what we were looking for. It's what we realized lots of other people will be looking for. It is, we like to call it, it's a slogan, but it's also true that it's the remedy for modern life. And we didn't make that up. That is basically supported by decades and decades of scientific research. Some now, as of last year, in our big partnership with AllTrails, being our own primary research. But this is what Chris and I sort of saw in pockets around the world when we started, that people like CEOs, founders, athletes, creatives, they were using the benefits of nature like they did the gym. So they were going there regularly for a certain reason, and the way that it made them feel and the impact it had on their everyday lives. Our goal with Unyoked is to raise awareness for the scientific benefits of nature and then help people connect with those easier. So some of those benefits you guys might already be aware of is it helps us de-stress. So 2 hours in nature can lower our cortisol levels, being our stress hormone, by 20%. And we even proved last year that our own experience is tied to all of these benefits. So we proved that 2 days in our Unyoked cabins can be up to 50% more powerful than mindfulness meditation. And as avid meditators, that was pretty powerful for us, but more powerful at reducing burnout and improving positive well-being. So that's huge. And, we think it's the superpower that is right in front of our noses. So if we can harness that and help people tap into it easily and effectively, which is what our whole experience is about, then we really think we can build something special and have a lasting impact on people as well.
That's right. And, the experience just isn't good for individuals. We've built Unyoked to be a business for good, and that good extends to the world, we think, as a whole. What we do at Unyoked is we want to get more people out to nature more often. We've facilitated over 1 million hours in nature to date. And through this, we're able to introduce people to those benefits of nature, but we're also able to educate them and introduce them to a different way of living, because they come out there and they're being provided for by an off-grid cabin. It's solar powered, composting toilets, local water source. We don't have to connect to main sewerage, mains water, or mains power. We don't have any foundations. We can leave the environment exactly how we found it after the cabins wheeled off. And so we see ourselves as both an educator and a facilitator to help a new generation really connect with the natural world and then engage in fighting to protect it.
Yeah, and that's going back to that goal of helping people see and use nature like they do the gym or meditation apps. The next step of that, which Chris is referring to here, is that we think that's important, because once people realize the value and the impact that nature has on our everyday, we'll as a population, I suppose, but take the steps required to protect it for future generations. And that's our goal with all of this.
Exactly. And we're also, through our partnerships with landowners and organizations, we're able to provide a more sustainable revenue source. So some of these partners are able to turn away from other destructive practices and focus on sustainable tourism as their source of income.
So looking a bit to where we are now.
Yeah, so you can see here we've grown steadily since we were first mover into this market starter back in 2016, 2017. We've been able to set the foundation for growth by growing at that pace. So we've been able to focus on the building blocks and having a strong foundation for future scale. We've been able to do that while traversing some pretty seriously unexpected events over the past number of years, including adverse weather, COVID, obviously, and then economic conditions of late as well, with decreased consumer spending. So we've been able to show that we have a resilient business and that we've learnt from these experiences and been able to build a really, really strong foundation for this next stage of the business.
Yeah, and what we've done is we've gone slower in the early years deliberately to put in place key building blocks of the business that we've identified from day one as being critical to build competitive advantage and cement our moats, which we like to believe have been successful in doing so far. And we'll dive into those in a little bit as well. But over the last sort of 18 months, we have completed our current growth phase. So we raised our Series A, we raised a crowdfund off Birchal, our first one, which is super exciting, and building a great group of supporters, which might some of you guys be on the phone already today as well. So thank you. And then our Series A in 22-23, that was to execute our last phase of growth. And in the last 12 months, it's seen us double our revenue and our footprint size, while importantly keeping costs non-linear in terms of their growth. So our strategic focus over that time period has been footprint growth in Australia and the UK. We are in New Zealand as well, although we have slowed down growth in that market for over this time period. We focused on building our brand strength even further through partnerships and through interesting and unique content that serves to raise that awareness for nature in multiple use cases, so we can help new segments realize the benefits and come and use Unyoked. And also targeting EBITDA positivity, which we are pretty much there right now, sort of flirting in and out, which is super exciting. As anyone who's a founder there or from the financial world, you may have a smile on your face, because it's a big achievement for the business, and that's been a focus, especially in this economic environment, building out cost efficiencies. The way that we've done that and you heard me mention our moats before, since day one is executing a simple yet really deep strategy. So this rests on centralized operating models and focus between three core parts of our business, which we have deepened and deepened over our last 7 years. Those are, brand, supply, which is cabins and sites, and the experience, and operations. So the brand at a high level is our goal is to build that global category owning lifestyle brand. So to create something that is that Nike of nature, that represents this lifestyle, this way of change that's been powering through the world where people look to live more balanced lives and away from the 9 to 5. On supply, it's by having sites that allow people to tangibly live out those values. So unique, so immersive, so bang on that brand promise that people get the value when they're there, tell all of their friends, and come back multiple times, as well as making our cabin supply and serviceability and operational side super efficient, which allows us to do it consistently at high levels of quality at scale. So diving into each of those a little bit. So our brand-led marketing strategy has allowed us to create and scale our differentiated brand. Now, our brand footprint far outstrips our cabin footprint. It's just one anecdote, but something that's super exciting for Chris and I was the other year we had an 8-page spread in Wired magazine in Japan. And that's really cool, maybe for the nerds of you like me, for 2 reasons. One is Wired magazine is focused on writing about the future and technological trends. For them to write about nature and getting away from technology, that's huge. And the whole piece was about Unyoked and our mission to do that and how we've done that. And secondly, it was in Japan, a market which we are not in yet, but not in at all. So that's just an example. And we've seen that worldwide with sort of upwards of 300 articles every single year off the back of our unique brand partnerships, like the ones you'll see here on the page. So the cabin we built with Matthew McConaughey, our partnership with Apple, our partnership with All Trails, and our scientific study that we did with DDB, where we proved that 2 days in the cabin boosts both creative output and originality of ideas for creative professions. This essentially has allowed us to drive high levels of word of mouth and high levels of organic growth, which is meant for the first sort of 6 years of our operation. We haven't had to deploy most standard marketing levers like digital advertising or SEO. Since then, we have started experimenting in the past 12 months with those to get ready for our next level of scale. But that shows just how much upside is available when we were able to grow to the extent that we have and the success that we have with only organic driving initiatives in play. Moving to our second moat, which is supply. Chris, did you want to take them through this one?
Certainly, yeah. So as Cam mentioned, it's a big part of our differentiation. The properties where our cabins are located, where they're hidden, they have to provide immersive nature. They can't have reminders of human touch, like sounds and sights. You have to be able to just see and hear nature. All of our research shows that complete immersion is integral to being able to receive the best benefits from nature, to be able to actually realize those cortisol level drops and increase connection with your partner, increase creativity, some of the big hitting scientifically backed benefits. So to do that, we've had thousands of potential hosts, we call them, or landowners, apply to host cabins on their properties. We have a dedicated team with a proprietary process that screens them both as a partner and an operator, but also at the quality of the site level. And it goes through multiple checks and balances throughout our organization till it gets to a point where we've accepted a site to come onto the network. On our cabins, we own our design IP, and we've been iterating it for 7 years. We've had 12 generations of cabins, all iterated continuously with longevity, with experience, and ease of serviceability and sustainability as core aspects of the build. We're working on a project at the moment to bring cabin costs down by 30% on the cost last year, and we're very hopeful to achieve that in the next couple of months, which is exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. And then that brings us to the third piece of our moat and of our strategy. And this is probably the one that is the most overlooked. So since the very beginning, Chris and I knew, that there's a reason why no one did this before. We're essentially building single room boutique hotel rooms in hard to get to locations, often without phone reception, with different people cleaning them for an average of every 3 cabins. Like, that is a mouthful, and it's also hard to do. And we have noticed out there, some of the followers in the market not taking note of that part and thinking that the rest is easy and having significant difficulties. It's something that we've iterated on from the very beginning. We started actually cleaning the cabins ourselves. I would drive down at sort of 4 a.m. to Kangaroo Valley, where our first cabin, Miguel, was, before a board meeting at the bank, and have to, be wiping mud and sometimes some other things off my shoes as I got back into the city. And we did that on purpose because we wanted to take it back to first principles and build the cabins themselves, but also the operational infrastructure that would allow our hosts and our cabin managers to clean it in under an hour. So we aim for 45 minutes. Do it really easily, and do it in a way that would continually allow high levels of quality to be done. So that's what we've done. Essentially, we've built this global operating model that's automated and streamlined to a large degree. We've got a proprietary app that the cabin managers go through every clean and take photos of core sections, and that gets uploaded to our operations associates team to get vetted. We've got 24-hour connections between hosts and our teams, with really tight feedback loops with all of our guests. And that has allowed us to have an NPS of an average of about 75 over 7 years. And, that where we like to think of ourselves as humble guys, but that is something we're extremely proud of. NPS, for those of you that aren't aware, it's Net Promoter Score. It's the global standard for customer experience score, developed by Bain Consulting. Sometime in the early 2000s, I think, but don't quote me on that. But essentially, it goes from -100 to +100. So being in the positives alone is a huge achievement, but being at 75, as you can see on the slide there to the bottom right, it's higher than some of our most aspirational brands like Apple. It's higher than Nike. It's higher than a lot of D2C brands. And importantly, it's way higher than any other accommodation provider or the hotel industry average. And that is because of all of those 3 elements plugging in, and us being able to deliver that in different countries, time zones, climatic regions, geography, you name it, different demographics, all of that. It's a super important part, and something that we have developed into a big moat that's let us create the business that we're at. Jumping to the opportunity ahead. So hopefully a lot of you guys are you've got the finger on the pulse already. You probably have by joining this webinar, but this sort of wave of change that we founded the business on and sort of timed it luckily to start, and through hard work and strategy have kept it going over the years. This is growing and growing. You could tell, like, from back at the beginning when there was early adopters to now having companies like News Corp on our B2B program. The market has evolved. People are becoming more and more aware of this need in a deeper sense, and also a broader sense in terms of the different demographics and segment that it's applicable towards. A good analogy for that is looking at meditation. You look at, some people probably here as well were already adopters of it ahead of the curve, but we can call it, I think, a fringe thing about 10 years ago. And now you look at what Headspace and Calm have done for that market, where hedge fund managers are meditating for 20 minutes on their lunch break, which would have been unheard of earlier on. So we see nature as the next meditation, and we're trying to do what those businesses have by raising that awareness and growing the market as that global mass adoption sort of comes in parallel. And yeah, we think that it's a big opportunity in terms of market size. If you think more granularly for a moment as well, in terms of actual sort of market size, a good way to perceive the size is that, we've got just under 150 cabins globally at the moment. One hotel in Sydney or Melbourne has more than 150 rooms in it. And if you think how many different hotels, how many different businesses there are in that segment, that's the potential size of this experience as well. There is a lot of upside before saturation in most markets.
Yeah, and talking about market signals, we often look to the US, who tend to be slightly ahead of us here in APAC or Europe as well. And there's been some really positive elements in the industry over there. We saw recently that Marriott acquired what we could call our US competitor or US lookalike, Getaway, at the end of last year, and put out a great statement about their belief in the outdoor segment and in immersive nature travel as being a huge category moving forward and something that their customer base is demanding from them. Similarly, Hilton last year entered the outdoor space with a partnership with AirCamp over in the US. So these market signals are a positive sign for the future for us, and these sort of acquisitions haven't happened in the markets that we're operating in yet in APAC and Europe.
So moving to our planned growth trajectory. So with all of that, what we've achieved, where we've been, where we are now, which is that 150 cabins across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. What next? And that's what brings us here to speak to all you guys to look to bring on board our next round of supporters. We have a 200 cabin contract signed with the UK's largest landowner. We've got 1,000 plus sites in our regular pipeline, and our plan and our goal is to grow sustainably to 600 cabins over the next 5 years. Our primary growth focus will be the UK off the back of that exciting contract, which we'll go into more detail about. But we also have a number of our standard site pipeline across the UK as well. So our state-based strategy, rewilding organizations and things like that. We'll move into the EU, depending on the time of this raise being closed, either in summer or autumn this year, hopefully, or the next spring over there. And we've got a similar agreement pending in our target market there. And then in Australia, we'll continue to grow using our successful private landowner approach to date outside of each of our core markets.
That's right. Thanks, Cam. And so that partnership that Cam just mentioned then is with Forestry England, who is the largest landowner in the UK, a government organisation. And we went through a public tender process and won a contract to put 200 plus cabins across their 1 million hectares of forest and woodlands. So it's something that's super exciting for us. It can help them, build a sustainable revenue source away from forestry activities. And part of the agreement is also that some of the money coming from our customers will be put back into the care and preservation of the land that the cabins are on and around. So yeah, something that we're super excited about, and definitely the center of growth for the business over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and what's exciting about that is essentially a good way to think of that is one host. They just act as one host, but with 1 million hectares of available land, which could open up a number of sites, being 200 of our standard Unyoked, but there's also opportunities to expand into slightly different offerings as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, like group offerings, family offerings, those sort of things too.
Yeah. What are we going to be? How are we going to be doing that? So we'll be executing that growth in parallel to continuing to deepen those moats. So our strategy is still to overinvest in brand and marketing, our supply and our operations, and further differentiate ourselves in the market and significantly grow that footprint. Some key things that we'll be focusing on over the brand, and that some of this fundraise will be for, is to drive more global unique partnerships, which bring up those benefits of nature. So think companies like wearable companies, big global aspirational partners. We have them in the pipeline ready to go, and there's super cool stuff coming. We're going to increase our valuable thought leadership. So that science is a big thing for Chris and I. We want more people to understand the power of this. Like, we want them to look past the marketing. It's real, and we're biased obviously, but hopefully you guys can all come and try it, or you already have. But doing more studies that speak to specific use cases and use that to obviously generate press and media, but enabling people to really understand how it affects their day-to-day is going to be huge. On the supply side, we're going to expand and deepen our guided experiences and target specific use cases there. So Chris touched on it earlier, but partnering with celebrities and aspirational figures that specialize in key areas. I won't mention any names yet because they're a little secret, but there's some awesome stuff there that basically will all help people slow down quicker and get that value they're looking for while they're out there. You know, if you guys have been to our experiences already, you'll notice our field guide in there. The first page is "Now what?" ? And that was built from our research with our customers, some of our crowdfund people, and also our own experiences. When you arrive, sometimes if you're new to it, and if your mind is racing 1,000 miles an hour from work or just life, you can be a little bit lost when you arrive at anywhere, and that could be a barrier to more people coming to the experience. So we are deepening our guides to help people along the way and open the market further to new people, so they can really have, you know, guided itineraries and things like that if they want to. We'll also be launching our first officially communal and group focused locations. So we expanded into sort of family use cases about 12 months ago. It was already being done quite a lot, but we expanded into sort of the how and had some experiential elements that help people do that. Still using our standard cabins and locations. So in the UK, all of our cabins have 4 per site. We help people understand for groups already which ones are located within walking distance. However, and in Australia, the same. We have some with 3 on and some with 4 on. But this will be sites where they are closer together without jeopardizing the Unyoked experience, but for 2 key reasons. One is people that are slightly apprehensive about feeling alone right now, which we've identified through our surveys that there is a large opportunity there. And secondly, for businesses and for groups of friends and things like that, which again is a large opportunity. Finally, on our operational front, we'll be increasing the automation of our back of house through scaling our AI infrastructure. So we've already been experimenting and implementing this for about sort of 9 or 12 months now. And there's significant opportunity there to use all these new tools that are constantly coming out to help us get our person to cabin ratio even further increased on the cabin side, and run efficiencies so we can get to that profitability mark sooner, which is a goal of ours for the future as well. But yeah, I guess that's wrapping it up. Is, you know, we've taken you through a bit of where we've come from, where we are now, where we'd like to go. You're aware of that goal of ours that is to build the Nike of nature, so a global category-leaning lifestyle brand that represents this way of life closer to nature. You know that we're going to do it with those 3 core pieces of our business: the brand, the supply, and operations. And yeah, I think we'd love to start hearing some questions that you guys might have.
Yes, please.
Hey guys, thank you so much for such a great presentation. If you could just stop sharing, we'll then open up to the question part of the thing. Brilliant, thank you. Just to everybody, if you haven't popped your questions into the Q&A box, this is your time to do so. I'm just seeing a few questions come through, talking around sort of shareholder benefits, sort of adding any rewards to your offer for investors, and also some questions around valuation. So just to give everyone some context, the offer will be going live on the 25th of Feb. And for as long as you've expressed interest into the campaign, you'll be able to have early access to the offer document where you'll find all of this information in more detail. So just moving on to the next question. So why crowdsource funding other than other sort of rounds of funding types?
Great question. And sorry, we had our video off on our side earlier. We'd love to say that we're outside in the fields at one of our locations and this is sunshine, but it's a malfunctioning light. So apologies for that. But why crowdfunding? So the same reason we did it the first time, and we've just got more conviction of that over the years since doing that. So we have got to where we are because of our community. We have a really, really tight community, and you know, something that we're proud of. Like it's you know, a small thing, but we've from the very beginning we call team that talks with the customers, customer engagement, not customer service, because we want to create real and foster deep engagement with our whole community. It's how we've deepened our experience, how we've come up with new ideas, new products. It's how we get all the surveys and everything like that. And we want to share that value back, you know, so people are so forthcoming with all that constructive feedback that we want to help them get something out of it as well, other than just helping off their good nature. So yeah, being able to reward them in some way and having them as part and formalizing that relationship is really exciting for us. And yeah, we're looking to do this second one for those reasons.
Yeah, I'd say also the upcoming partnership with Forestry England, you know, it's a public entity, and you know, it feels right to us to you know, we're trying to help people access that land in a better way and be able to immerse themselves on it, but also to be able to let the public, both in Australia and the UK, be part of the journey from Unyoked side, and invest in the company and its growth, and the rewards from that side too, we think is important.
Definitely. And working with you guys as well, it's so obvious that community is at the heart of everything you do. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, moving on to the next question. You talk about saturation versus size of the market. Historically, the cabin usage has hit approximately 65% utilization rates. This has slowly gone down since 2021. Many hotels hit the 80 to 90% utilization rates. Can you talk a bit more on how you aim to increase this? And if this isn't feasible, is this the rate you will target?
Great question. So yeah, so basically before the cost of living crisis that's currently in hand in the global economic recession, our occupancy rates were higher. You know, we were very proud of that. And yeah, they have gone down. So they're around 65-70% averaged over the last little period. If you exclude the ramp up in the UK from when we launched, because we launched mid fundraising round without any marketing activity at all. Our strategic approach over the last 18 months, acknowledging the economic climate that we're in and the impact on all sort of consumer brands, has been to focus on footprint growth and experiment with some acquisition channels. So you might have recall that I mentioned that we hadn't done digital advertising, SEO, anything like that, because we hadn't had to. You know, we were a certain size, but also the market was different. We've been experimenting with those channels and sort of working out which levers are right for our brand, right for our audience, and that we have some skills in and capabilities. So we now know which ones those are. And that's what we'll be investing in with this round, essentially, is looking to direct capital allocation to the right areas, so we can grow the top of funnel, but also so we can tweak conversion rate optimization on the website and things like that as well. We think that probably 70% and a little bit higher over the next sort of coming years is where our natural occupancy rate will return to. We have forecast, which I think you guys will have access to. I'm not sure, but that we have forecast them lower than that, because we've built our plan being a realistic and defensible plan, because we'd like to show that the economics, the numbers and everything are achievable and they're still attractive for everybody, with that realistic and defensible lens across it. So you'll get more detail in the offer document as well, and we welcome any further questions on that once you've gone through that.
Yeah, a couple of points which are important here. I think one, our cost base versus a traditional hotel, is more variable. Our arrangements with our hosts, we only pay the host when the cabin is occupied, so we don't have an ongoing lease all the time, like a fixed hotel would have. Another point is just the difference between that 70% and 85% occupancy is about one night per week, which we think there's a huge amount of upside in our marketing in these channels Cam just mentioned. Once we've got the capital to put behind it, we've got a number of different verticals which we haven't targeted yet, including international travelers. Our cabins are filled at the moment by domestic populations, but we're seeing millions and millions of people come in every year to the country who really should or are looking for a way to immerse in the best expression of our natural landscape, and Unyoked has that. So yeah, we see a lot of upside of it.
Yeah, and maybe adding to that is I imagine that your comparison rate there for the hotels is potentially the urban hotels. If you look at the comparison rates with regional short-term accommodation providers, you'll actually see our figures are actually above that. And we can share some data that we've got on that as well. But that it's we think that we're beating the market. It has been hit slightly by the consumer environment, but considering the marketing investment that we've made, which our cost of acquisition is only $40, so there's a lot of upside there. We've run a lean team for the past 18 months, focusing on those areas that I've mentioned. So there's a lot of upside to get there, but the exciting thing is the economics really work at the current levels, and they will at the next levels as well.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Moving on to another question. So obviously Unyoked is super passionate about environmental sustainability issues. Do you work with any sustainability or environmental causes and groups or projects?
We do. We've done some work with the Foundation for National Parks and Wildlife, who are doing amazing things, trying to preserve our natural landscapes in Australia. We work with a number of rewilding organisations over in the UK. Obviously, the partnership with Forestry England, it was our insistence that a portion of the revenue was going back into rehabilitation and preservation of the natural landscapes. It's definitely something that we're very passionate about, and as our footprint grows and our means grows, it's something that we're going to be more and more focused on.
Yeah, I mean, our probably unrelated, but Chris and my sort of personal long-term goal is that we can potentially have partners that purchase properties that were farming or forestry operations, and then we can reforest them and have Unyoked there as a way to generate sustainable income for those practices, but also bring people into that sort of rewilding, reforestation world. That is not for discussion in the offer document. That's much later on, blue sky, but that's we see the whole thing going hand in hand.
Amazing. It makes total sense. And just going kind of towards the forestry contracts that you've got in the UK, we've got some questions around that in terms of how long is that contract, if you can share that kind of information, and how long would you expect it to execute the contract?
Yeah, great questions. It's a 10-year exclusivity period. It's the first time in 50 years that the forestry organisation has partnered with an accommodation company. So a big scoop. And those 200 cabins, we're going to try and get them out as quick as possible. So over the next few years.
Awesome. Just moving on to another. So what do you see as your biggest threats or challenges to continuing growth beyond the existing contracts that you have?
Good question. I mean, historically, it's our biggest roadblock has been capital. I don't know if that's a cop-out of a question or not, but that has been it. So that still remains a risk. If we can't raise the right amount of money, we'll need to raise it again. Our aim is to not do that, but that's a risk potentially. But we've come up against that roadblock over and over again, and we are also EBITDA positive in a month and sort of basically there now. So that changes that situation as well, and moving towards profitability.
Yeah, I'd say there's economic risk, although we're optimistic that we're turning the opposite direction and coming out of that. There's competitive risk, but always. As I said, there are larger companies that are really interested in this space and in the US at the moment, but our strategy is positioning ourselves to be a part of that, not to get beat by that. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm seeing a few more questions kind of looking into sort of capital structure and amounts wanting to raise, and just to reiterate that sort of all this kind of information will be outlined in the offer document. This webinar is kind of more digging into the guys, the business, and sort of future plans and what you intend to do with the raise opposed to the financials. So yeah, just ensure that you're signed up to the expression of interest campaign, which is live on Birchal now, and you'll be able to find out all that information before the offer goes public. Moving on to another question, has Unyoked considered becoming a B Corp?
We have definitely. We've looked at it really closely a number of times, and sadly, it's been about an allocation of capital, really, and it is a costly exercise to undertake, where you need to bring in external consultants. We do run our business, and we've been across the framework, and we run our business close to what's intended there. So I think and I've spoken to a number of our friends and other founders who have gone down the route and discussed the pros and cons, and a lot of the pros come back to putting in the right governance and the right sort of thinking within your organization. And so we've tried to replicate some of that without having the B Corp tag, but it's definitely something that we'd like to do.
Yeah, last time we checked, there was a 9-month waiting list as well. And in terms of, we're a high growth business, we're running fast, as ironically as that is to helping people slow down, but we slow down as well. Definitely every quarter the team gets out and us to one of our locations to take our own medicine. But yeah, we'll have to review it, and it's definitely on the pipeline for this next phase.
Awesome. That sounds great. Moving on to the next question, which is living in Perth. There has been a big tightening up with short-term rentals, for example, the likes of Airbnbs in the southwest of Australia. How does your company differ in the planning and policy in this kind of market?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it does differ depending on where you're at, which local council you're in. So it is hard for me to give a blanket answer there. It really does come down to your local LGAs. In some of the states we can operate as caravans. In other of the states we're rural accommodation. It depends on exactly where you are.
Yeah, and we were in the south of West Australia previously, and the landowner, we believe, had to update some things from the council. So in order to not have the cabins waiting, we actually redeployed them. Now they're in Gidgegannup in that market, but that he has his property ready for redeployment now. So we'll be getting some cabins back down there. So yeah, it's all a matter of ticking the boxes essentially, depending on your site type, your council area, your LGA, and those sort of things. We help the hosts guide that, but it's the hosts who are responsible for that, because they understand all of their properties ins and outs, and they meet with the council and make sure that they're okay with that.
Absolutely. Amazing. Sort of moving on to the sort of threats and challenges, what do you see as your biggest threat or challenge to continuing growth beyond the existing contracts?
I think, again, it's largely the financial. It's being able to have the capital to deploy these cabins, because we're not a hugely capex intensive business like some, but we're not a technology business either. So the cabins do cost money. That's why Chris mentioned one of the core focuses of us have been to decrease the capital requirements, and we've done that. Our cabins are already way better quality at a way lower price than anything else available in the market, which we've just had confirmed by third-party valuation exercise was completed last year. And we've got some prototypes on site over in the UK and then short to be in Australia that look to cut those costs by some really healthy figures. And that will reduce our capital requirements even further, which reduces that barrier. But that's what we're doing this raise for, is we're aiming to raise enough that we can hit those goals without doing any other raises. Other than that, yeah, Chris mentioned the competitive environment before. Like the real only risk is if a huge player with a deep pocket comes in and says, I want to do this overnight, which is not, and this is probably not a great way of answering the question, but it's not that big of a risk because of all the things we mentioned before. It's very hard to build all of the systems, the processes, what we've got overnight, and that's why the more likely option is that person looks to partner or acquire us down the line at some stage. And the other followers in the market are subscale compared to us. They've been running for less years as well. We are going to be looking into potential M&A style things down the line. Again, that's not part of this offer. That's not part of our current realistic and defensible plan. It's stuff that we are looking at in the market, but that's blue sky. Those are really it. The other sort of risks obviously are climatic themed ones. So, but as Chris showed, we've been through once in a lifetime bushfires twice, once in a lifetime floods twice. We've been through COVID, global recession. While it wasn't fun, and definitely meant that we were going out to the cabins more than we usually are to de-stress, we we've built the resilience of the business, and our strategy of geographical diversification, our warning systems and risk management should allow us to offset those sort of periods should they happen again. So yeah, we're fairly
You're
confident.
equipped. Yeah, for sure. And looking into kind of what's the lifespan of the cabin. So how long would it take, sorry, for you to expect and it need to be replaced?
Yeah, great question. So as I alluded to earlier, we've had 12 iterations of cabins, and longevity has been one of the points which we've iterated on over that last 7 or 8 years. So our cabins now are built like a house. We depreciate them over 15 years, but they can last a lot longer than that. So they have interchangeable elements that where the wear and tear you would expect from a high use asset. So ply walls and floor can be taken out quite easily with a new sheet put back in, and then the place is looking like new again. Yeah, we choose robust services. We design the whole thing with ease of use and serviceability in mind, so that non-skilled labor can maintain it and service it when needed. And yeah, we've got a fleet of strong, robust cabins out there.
Yeah, our sort of thinking, while we haven't reached that time frame yet, is at the end of that life with a sort of like a somewhere between minor and major refurb, so sort of $10,000, we could have a working cabin again. And if solar technology has advanced significantly, we'd replace the solar. But other than that, their structure integrity would still be there, and we should hopefully still be able to use them.
So thanks, guys. And just looking at another question. So there were some promotions related to a theme of couplehood. Is that an emphasis you would keep coming back to?
Couplehood was the word. So
But yeah.
relationships, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
As in,
Yeah, it must just relate to the kind of setup of the cabins themselves. You said you're expanding into larger groups. I think maybe if that person wants to make it a bit clearer, but
could be a few things there. Like firstly, where if they're referring to promotions, so one of our current campaigns, so creative campaigns at the moment is around connection. So
yeah.
one of our core use cases, I think it's about 86% of our users come with someone else, whether that's romantic, friends, whether otherwise. Since day one, that's been one of the 3 core use cases we targeted. So de-stressing, disconnecting, being creative, thinking clearly, promoting sort of thoughts, and then connecting with yourself and others. Those are the 3 ones most supported by the science, and the biggest markets for them, the biggest opportunities. So we have been promoting, going with yourself, to connect with yourself, but also your partner lately, as it is, in this modern life, we run fast and hard. You're like ships in the night. All you need is space and time. And, people say it doesn't grow on trees, but it actually does grow on trees. You just need to make this time and create the moments to get out there. So we've been talking about that a lot because it's one of our core use cases. You target 2 decision makers at once. There's a lot of sort of strategy behind it as well. In terms of the other angle that you mentioned, Ellie, the locations. So yeah, our core use case has been for 1 to 2 people plus the young families. So 1 to 2 people plus half a person or another half. And that has been because we started just building the cabins with 1 queen size bed to standardize the operations and the systems and do that scaling on that operation infrastructure we referred to. Then we've expanded into sort of some group locations because you can walk between some of the cabins. Although if you didn't want to, you'd never know. Obviously, fully secluded, can't see or hear anyone else. And with this next raise, we will be looking to build out more sort of communal locations where the cabins are slightly closer for feelings of safety and seclusion for certain people that are apprehensive, but also for companies and businesses that want to send their teams down, of which we've got a huge pipeline ready.
Sounds incredible. Sounds really good. And sort of focusing on the cabins themselves as well. Are you comfortable sharing how much they are to build? Obviously, they must vary, but in terms of general.
Yeah, definitely. So it's about $100,000 landed at our price last year. We don't want to speak too much about the future plans, but yeah, we've managed to get those prices down.
Awesome. Okie dokie. I'm going to wrap with that final question. Thank you so much, Chris and Cam, for such a great presentation, and thank you everyone for joining today's Investor Q&A webinar. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of this video will be sent around to everybody who registered, just in case anyone wasn't able to attend today. And the expression of interest campaign for Unyoked is live for a little longer. So if you haven't already, just jump onto the Birchal platform and check out their company profile. And the early access of the offer campaign, as I mentioned earlier, will be open on the 25th of Feb. So make sure you get your expression of interest in to have access to the offer documents and all the key terms of the offer before it opens to the public. Thanks again, guys, and have a lovely day.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.